This man didn't do me nothing. He didn't hurt me in no type of way. He didn't hurt none of my black people, none of my families. So why should I shoot him?
During the Vietnam War, an anti-war movement emerged that altered the course of history. This movement didn't take place on college campuses, but in barracks and on ships. It flourished in Army stockades, Navy brigs, and the dingy towns that surrounded military bases. Hundreds went to prison and thousands into exile, and by 1971 it had, in the words of one colonel, infested the entire armed services.
You must understand that I liked being a Green Beret. I thought it was good. I was really proud of what I thought I was doing. The problem I had was realizing that what I was doing was not good. I was doing it right, but I wasn't doing right. I was out on a patrol near Hipwa, and we took a couple of prisoners. Whether they were combatants or not, who knows. The patrol was led by Americans, but there were Vietnamese, ARVN there, and they were turned over to ARVN, and ARVN used the old-fashioned methods of interrogation, force, torture. That was pretty common practice. I tell you, as bad as that treatment was, the cynicism that attached to it was the part that was really sickening, I thought. And that's about everything I've been taught, everything I learned, everything I grew up with. This is just not the way you treat human beings. And it was all done for the good of the cause, I guess. I got out of the military in 1966. I got out because of the things I saw, the things I was doing, and the reasons that we were given for doing them.
How many people in the Army would you think feel the same way perhaps as you do are against the war?
I really don't know how many, but I know how many I met, and that was a majority of the men that I met in the service were opposed, but really didn't know how to voice their opinion.
And with soldiers beginning to question the war in the wake of the Tet Offensive, thousands began going AWOL, or absent without leave. Many found their way to San Francisco, where a series of events brought the emerging GI anti-war movement onto the national stage.
Have you given much thought to the penalty of being AWOL?
Yes.
Can you see your change, please?
We joined together in July 1968.
We took sanctuary in a church and chained ourselves to ministers. We essentially called the press and said to them, we're not going to Vietnam. We're refusing our orders, and in fact, we're resigning from the military to come and get us.
I had nothing to lose, and I had no idea what was going to come. And that's a free place. It's a really free place, you know. You don't know what's going to happen, you know where you're going, but you know what you're doing.
With more and more soldiers turning against the war, a handful of peace activists opened the first of what would become a network of dozens of anti-war GI coffee houses located in the towns that hovered near military bases. The dusty Texas town of Killeen, just outside Fort Hood, which housed over 30,000 troops, became the home of a GI coffee house known as the Oleo Strut.
Fort Hood was both a combination of guys going to Vietnam and guys who'd been to Vietnam and came back. And as time went on, the guys who had been to Vietnam played a subversive role to the guys who were going.
And they go out on ambushes. Like for a 1 month period, we go out on ambushes and we kill over 50 people, in the early hours of the morning. And you start looking at bodies because they've got to get their body count. And who's there? Well, the majority were women and children. And what were they doing? What was their crime? They were carrying food. They were carrying food to their friends up in the hills. For anyone who thinks he can duck out of it and hopefully be a Kirk typist and not have to see any of that, he's making a mistake because he's supporting the war.
A new phenomenon has cropped up at several Army bases these days. a so-called underground GI press, which consists largely of anti-war newspapers.
Typed, mimeographed, printed, the GI Underground press exploded.
And we used to distribute it clandestinely on base. We'd go around and leave bunches of them in barracks. We'd go through barracks at night and leave them on foot lockers. If you were caught distributing literature on base, that was a court-martial offense.
There must have been close to 300 anti-war newspapers written, produced, and published on bases all throughout the world. It was wherever there were GIs, American GIs in the world.
This was Armed Forces Day, and in many cities across the country, there were the usual parades, displays, and bands. But the recent surge of protest over the war in Indochina cast a shadow over today's activities. This was even true at some military bases where the presence of anti-war demonstrators led to the cancellation of planned observances.
1,000 GIs marched the first year right outside the base. And they told people it was off limits, and they told people that if you went there, you were going to get arrested. The store owners downtown were putting up plywood coverings on their windows because the cops told them it was going to turn into a riot. But then people decided to change it to Armed Forces Day because, you know, we thought making fun of your enemy was as valuable as yelling at him. The second year, 1971, it had to be 3,000-4,000 out in the street.
We truly believed what would stop that war was when the soldiers stopped fighting it.